We got a good story coming out of Minnesota. This year's been one after another stories about marijuana, be it medical or recreational, and there's going to be even more. So buckle up, people. I'm already behind. Here we have 13 pages of copy. I already did a story from a newspaper article, and I got more if I need them. They just keep pouring out of the woodwork. So these are almost all. I think these are all marijuana stories right here, every one of them. And the last one I just did was. So today it's all weed, buddy. Normally I'd just do this like a weekly wrap up, but again, I said this last week. Every story deserves its own clip, deserves its own attention. And if you think I'm just trying to milk YouTube for extra ad money and stuff, man, you just watch the clip and tell me what I could have cut, because this is all good. So in Minnesota, the Department of Health is considering adding autism to the growing list of conditions in which parents can be prescribed medical cannabis. The consideration carries with it a lot of emotions for families looking for something to help their loved ones with a condition where there's so little known and so little true remedies, you know. And you keep hearing over and over people talking about anecdotal this and anecdotal that. In the case of autism, and in the case of seizures especially, or in the case of somebody that just took chemo pills and had radiation, now all of a sudden they can't eat for days, you know, just puking every time they think about eating. And then they smoke a joint, next thing you know, they're eating a full course, 3-course meal or something. I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. That's not, I mean, you might call that anecdotal because you don't have a scientist with a clipboard sitting there writing stuff down for 7 years. But I'll tell you what, that's some powerful evidence, powerful shit. When a kid goes from 800 seizures a week to 0, that's powerful shit. All right, so in a life full of uncertainty, Cami Kramer is sure of one thing: medical cannabis helps her autistic son Elliot in a profound way. But 15-year-old Elliot's autism is not why he's allowed under state law to take it. Elliot suffered from debilitating anxiety, and that affected every aspect of his life. Cami told Fox 9. This is Fox 9 News, by the way, out of Minneapolis. So here we go. She goes on to say, he had hundreds of tics every single day and was suffering from peer relationships because of that. He was embarrassed and he couldn't control them. Cami said Elliot started using medical cannabis July 1st, 2015, the first day in which it was legal in Minnesota, to help manage his Tourette's syndrome. Tourette's syndrome is one of the handful of conditions in Minnesota that's actually on the list. He had an immediate 90% reduction in tics, but his mom also started to notice it was also helpful for many of the side effects related to autism. The Department of Health is considering adding autism to the list, but in that consideration, they really have only anecdotal evidence from parents like Cami and kids like Elliot that it actually works, creating a degree of uncertainty around the already mysterious condition with no cure. Is there uncertainty around the idea that vaccinations cause autism? There is. Is there science that will say that it actually doesn't? There is. I don't know why I'm throwing that out there, but this anecdotal evidence is different when it comes to marijuana working for Tourette's and autism and all the other things I mentioned earlier. It's because it actually is working, all right? She just heard her, you know, 90% reduction in tics with Tourette's. But, you know, for some reason, we just don't know if we can trust this anecdotal evidence. There's so much uncertainty. Well, I don't get it. Maybe to consider a study valid, maybe you should just do the anecdotal, take the anecdotal case and observe it for a certain amount of time. As a doctor, your opinion should count, and you should say, okay, this actually works for this patient. We're going to run with it. Okay, so autism is the result of alterations in how the brain processes information, which then allows how the mind sees the world. For someone with autism, that often means communication problems, social challenges, and repetitive behaviors. As for how it's leaning on the decision, the Department of Health issued a statement saying that the process needs to take its course before we comment on specific proposals. So there you have it again. You have to go through this process, and these, in this case, the process is, I'm sure there's some kind of a board that reviews maybe the anecdotal cases or whatever they got to look at. They review it and they decide whether or not to include that on the list of qualifying conditions for medical marijuana. In Michigan, we've tried this for certain things and it fell flat. Like autism was one of them. We tried autism in Michigan, and the board, the panel, whatever you want to call it, for medical marijuana conditions, shot it down. They also shot down insomnia and something else I can't remember, but just, absurd stuff. John Weinberg is the director of the Autism Society of Minnesota. I'm sure he knows something. He's the director, right? He says parents are challenged daily to find something that works for their child. But giving cannabis, even the medical kind, needs to be considered carefully. And here you have the pharmaceutical industry using a doctor as a puppet. Quote, what we hope is that they are approached reasonably and that they're approached methodically and that it's just not anecdotal evidence. Weinberg said that one family says, oh, this worked for my child because a case study of one does not mean anything in the long term. Who fucking cares? It's safe and it's non-toxic. Unlike Adderall, benzodiazepine, antidepressants, antipsychotics, and all the other bullshit that you give people who suffer from autism. And if you want to know what they give some of these very young children on autism, just look it up. Just look it up. I know people with autistic children. I've seen what they give them. And they've even told me themselves, I wish we could just give them marijuana because it actually works. On the anecdotal evidence side, Elliot shines. All right, Elliot. A year on medical cannabis for his Tourette's and the subsequent effect on his autism have allowed him to be mainstreamed at school. And he is now running on the Egan High School cross-country team. Now remember, before it wasn't even like that he was that much of an outcast or whatever. He just wasn't getting along, maybe getting a little bit picked on for the tics. Now he's mainstreamed at school, so they don't even have to have him separated from the other kids, from the quote-unquote normal kids. I don't want to use terms when I describe people with autism as between normal and people with autism or normal and anything else, because that's part of the problem with being autistic is you actually are normal. It's just, like I said, you're wired so different that you don't see the world the same as everybody else. You're normal, just to you, everything that everybody says is normal isn't normal, first of all. That's a big part of being autistic. All right, so while he's a young man of, did I stutter? He's on the cross-country team too, running, doing well running on the cross-country team. So he's not shy, he's not stuck in the repetitive motions and repetitive activities. He's not depressed about being in the condition he's in. He's participating, he's doing good at a healthy thing, cross-country. Come on. While he was on all those pills for autism or whatever else he was on the pills for, the Tourette's, they put pills in kids' mouth for Tourette's too, and it don't work. When he was on those things, he definitely was more withdrawn and not out there and not on the sports team, any sports team. While he is a young man of a few words, Elliot told Fox News, being part of the simplest of teenage things makes him feel whole. And that's important. If y'all remember when you were a teenager, that's the most important thing. A year ago, Cammie could not have imagined her son attending high school football game or running with his teammates on a track. Now she wants that for other kids like Elliot. Quote, I believe it's worth fighting for because I know Elliot is not alone. I know there are other kiddos with autism and their families and believe it should be their option to explore. As I said, it's not dangerous, it's not toxic. So, anecdotal, okay, we don't know for sure this is going to work for your kid. It might not. Everybody's wired different. Literally, with autism, you are also wired different than 90% of everybody or anybody that doesn't have autism for that matter. And like I said, if you were somebody that had a kid with autism and you're trying all the stuff that the doctors are telling you and it's still not working, or it's working a little, or it has like its ups and downs, or you just traded your child off for a zombie because it works so much that you don't have nothing left of who your kid was, and your kid's not being able to participate in being a kid, you know. So there you have that. That's probably the most important thing. And if you give parents a tool to use like cannabis and it works, then they're gonna thank you forever. But if it don't work, they're gonna be like, okay, we'll move on and try something else. And if it don't work, it's not gonna kill the kid. And if it did work, and I don't know what I was gonna say there, but I'm just saying that if it don't work, it's not a big deal. It's just another thing you can explore, another avenue you can try. That's been anecdotally working for a lot of people. A lot of people. All right. In addition to autism, the Department of Health is considering things like, now get ready for this list because none of these are going to get approved. And that's why I think there's a good chance for autism, because the pharmaceutical industry doesn't have a lock on, oh yeah, we can just give you this orange bottle and you're fine. And people believe it because they see anecdotal evidence. No, they don't. They see anecdotal evidence that that's bullshit, that they don't have a cure for autism, that they don't have a way to make the person with autism be able to live a normal life even. Whereas cannabis has that option. And not that they're doing it because of that reason, but they're doing it because all these things I'm about to tell you, they got a lock on. They got pills and shit that they can say, oh, this works, so you're good. Don't worry about cannabis. We got you. And so these other things that they're trying to consider is arthritis, depression, diabetes, insomnia, and PTSD. We've already seen the federal government shoot PTSD down last week for veterans coming home from war with the kind of PTSD where you literally need anything, all tools in the shed, you know. You gave this guy all tools in the shed, or I hope you did, when he was out there blowing people up and getting blown up by people. Why wouldn't you give him all the tools in the shed to help fight back that PTSD? All right, so these conditions are the ones that they want that should be allowed to be treated with medical cannabis. A decision on whether to add autism or these other conditions will likely come next month. So big stories next month. We got the elections. We got who knows what other disaster will happen because of that, and we have all those marijuana things on all those ballots. So when the election happens, we get to do all the reports on all the states, on all their laws, and about what they mean to all the people that live there, and when these laws are going to go into effect and all that stuff. But in the meantime, that's another big story to look for next week. I'll be covering it. And I hope they get all those conditions approved, but to be honest, man, they probably got together in a dark room with Big Pharma people, execs, and lobbyists, and they were smoking big fat cigars, and they were like, look guys, we've seen your list. Autism is the only thing you get. All those other ones are gonna be ours as far as the eye can see. There's no changing that in any time in the future. So arthritis, depression, diabetes, insomnia, and PTSD, those are ours. You can have the autism because we don't know what to do with it. And to be quite frank, we're getting sued.